Good morning, everyone. My name is Yin Hua, and today is the week 9 session for CHM405A CM Classics 2. Welcome, everyone. Now, we missed one of the concept, and thank you, George, for finding that one. I never realized it. See, you can see I'm so hopeless in a way to find subtle things has been not properly organized in the original files. And then until I read the weekly concept, realize something has been added additionally. So let's have a look, something we missed from last week, which is still talking about the damp warmth in week 8, and which is covered damp warmth, but this warms more than the damp. So what happens when the heat more than the damp? So here's a basic formula or pattern involved. When there's a stagnated qi from the damp heat that has transformed into toxins. So this is week 8 information, thank you, which has been found in week 8 outside of the zip file. Thank you, George. Thank you very much. Now, this specific concept, no matter where we find it, which is outside the zips, so now thanks, George, find it out. We can share them to each other. Happy to chat today. If we're suffering sore throat, at the same time, lots of damp conditions, such as people have precursor of weak spleens, they are going to have lots of heaviness and tiredness in the body and a lot of damp. And this kind of sore throat cannot be resolved by single Yin Olao San. For this scenario, and 甘露消毒丹 or 甘露消毒饮 will be proper formula. Okay, we just wait a minute. A lot of questions. Oh, week 7. I find week 7. Thank you, Lucy. Okay. It's not in week 9, which is involved week 8 concept. So it missed from me last week. Yes, thank you, everybody. Now, this specific formula has been used for sore throat, not just due to wind toxic heat. It's involved damp heat toxins instead. So you can see the compositions from this formula, and it's completely different compared with Yin Olao San. They still have Nian Qiao here, and they still have some ingredients can manage the sore throat, Bo He, but the majority of them are deal with a bitter cold and deal with much more severe damp heat internally. A lot of flame or flame heat resolving ingredients involved. So bitter cold herbs, Huang Qing and Shegan, that's quite a bitter cold. Hua Shi Mu Tong diuretic, and Yin Chen Shi Chang Pu and deal with the damp heat. Bai Dou Gu deal with the damp, regulate the qi. So overall, there's more compound formula. When there's a different pattern, if the still heat more than the damp, but if the excessive heat in the stomachs with damp in the spleen, how we're going to treat. And then for these cases, you still have a big 4 conditions with additional damp. You're still using Bai Hu Tang, added additional Bai Zhu that can help manage both excessive heat in the stomachs and damp in the spleen. It can be used for tonsillitis. People have precursor of weak spleens qi and present with a lot of damp coat in the spleen and a lot of toxic heat related with stomach channel. Yes, thank you. And if there's a constipation involved, because heat is dominated, very easy consumes injury body fluid. So difficult bowel movement will become kind of concern. Dampness will not be dominated. And you can using Xiao Chen Qi Tang. Xiao Chen Qi Tang or Tiao Wei Chen Qi Tang has been used a lot as a kind of modifications formula in the Wen Bing practice as well. Now, for the residue or remnant of a damp heat pathogens internally, present with fullness in the stomachs and hungry, but do not have a desire to eat or not feel hungry at all, or fever, but still some heat signs presented, especially the This tongue shows a greasy, slightly yellowish tongue coating, pulse slippery and soft, and we keep using Wu Ye Lu Gen Tang. So we go through everything very briefly. You know what that means, yes? And for the Xi Jiao Di Huang Tang, which is very hard for us to practice when the conditions up to the level of the blood involved. They're very severe conditions. Blood level disorder is more severe than nutritive level disorder due to we only have limited volume of blood inside of the body. So once the bleeding starts, and very easy causing severe body qi and yin injury at the same time, leaking of body blood can result in stagnation of bleeding internally, causing very unnecessary coagulation, can causing death as well. So this situation usually end up in emergency. So just try understanding the concept, that will be enough. Zhenwu Tang, usually we know that it's related with what? Kidney yang deficiency. This is a very later stage after suffering damp heat for quite a while and excessive injury of the qi due to exuberant heat, and can cause a very, very severe yang collapse. And then some body fluid retention will still presented, intolerance will be occur, and then Zhenwu Tang will be applied based on the syndrome differential diagnosis. Up to the stage of Zhenwu Tang pattern and Du Shen Tang pattern, they all ended up in intensive care. So that means if we are not working in the hospital, we don't have much of chance to help manage it. Unless a patient is a family member, they refuse to go to hospital and they want to stay at home for the last chapter of their life, and you can have a try if you feel you're confident and brave enough. Otherwise, if you make more troubles, and other family member can send you to the court. So do be careful when the situation reaches to this stage. So that is basic summaries has been discussed last week. And damp worms in Wenbing is very slow onset and very, very slow progression in general, which is mainly affect the Middle Earth, both the stomach and the spleen. If heat dominated and present more heat in the stomachs, if it damp dominated, more disorder in the spleen will be presented as kind of clinical manifestations. And to identify the ratios between heat and the damp pathogens is very important to help us to construct proper formula to deal with it. So either equal for both heat and damp pathogens, or heat more than damp, or damp more than heat. And separate the heat from the damp is a basic ideal treatment. You may ask, how can I separate mingle the damp from the heat pathogen, which is impossible. But basically, they call that separated. A treatment combine both, using aromatic to help resolve the damp, using cold, bitter or cold aromatic to help resolving the heat simultaneously. And at the same time, regulate the qi, restore the qi dynamics in the middle gel. So aromatic, bitter, and blend herbs can be used in conjunctions. Aromatic will disperse the qi to regulate the qi to help dissipate the dampness from upper gel, and bitter combined with aromatic can manage the damp in the middle gel, and blend is focusing manage the damp related to the middle and the lower gel through the urinations. So key treatment principle, promote and qi activity. So any kind of qi dynamics obstructions will further deplete the spleen and stomach's functioning, and there'll be no more proper cleansing spleen's Yangtze rising, and no more proper stomach qi can descending, and all the Middle Earth functionalities will be disoriented. Okay, now any more questions for last week's concept or informations? Yes, Lucy. Thank you, Lucy.
When you say separating the damp from the warmth, do you mean we're literally trying to do that with the herbs, as in try to physically separate those aspects from one another in order to expel them?
Yeah, not physically, literally, yes. Not physically. We cannot separate the damp from the heat, but literally, yes, we separate it by apply aromatic herbs together. with cold and bitter and blend herbs.
Yep.
Thank
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, any of you can separate it from the water and the flour after you already made the dough. Can you separate it? So either we evaporated water from the baking, yes? So destroyed, diminish the water completely. And that is a way of separation as well from literature. But physically, we cannot once we mix together. So this is very nice terms presenting TCM. We separate it one from another. It's a very nice way. It's great. Now, if there's no more questions, let's have a look. If we could go through simple exercise to review last week's concept we learned for 3 hours. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Now, they are a very simple statement. Have a look if we could really understanding basic concept presented during discussion of damp worms in Wenbing. So first one, the damp worms of Wenbing usually happens in later summer and early autumn. So you all agree, so I agree with you. The reason is because in later summer, all the vapor of the qi, so all the water, evaporated water, become qi rising up as a kind of clouds or slightly descending down, follow the end of a stage of summer. So they're descending downwards. So it's very easy, causing much more high humidity in the air, or increase more rainfall for that specific season. So if you checked Asian country, and at the moment, and China, Japan has been suffering serious flooding and due to heavy rain, and causing a lot of destroys for the household, crops, and human beings. So that's a specific season happen in that part of the world. And we also have a lot of water rain this year in Australia, even in winter. Now, second question, damp heat is the pathogen that causes the damp worms. We're talking about the damp worms in Wenbing. So what's the pathogens for the damp worms? So mingled damp and heat. So this is correct. But there's have different ratios of the damp heat. Sometimes damp is more than heat, sometimes heat more than damp, sometimes equal in ratio. So basically, for this statement, they did not mention ratio, just mention damp and heat, two of them, or if you put a slash, it means one, mingle this kind of damp heat is a pathogen that causes damp worms. Yes, that's the correct one. If we do not put the slashes link the dampen heat, should be R, that'll be plural. So that's a little bit different, sorry. So overall, this statement is correct if in Chinese. Number 3, the concept of damp worms can be applied to treating any damp heat related illness in any season. Basically, which is correct, because TCM treatment based on what? Syndrome differential diagnosis. It's not based on disease name. It's not based on disease. You have diabetics, hepatitis, hypertension. No, it's based on differential syndromes. So if the specific pattern is caused by damp heat pattern, you can utilize damp worms concept to deal with it, which is correct. Otherwise, there'll be no volume, no value to learn this kind of concept if they cannot be used for clinical practice in any kind of season, because we don't have exactly 4 seasons in Australia. We have we have quite a lot of different climate situations or chi dynamics in Australia. Yes, Alyssa.
Yes, on that note, when choosing assignment topics, I got a little bit stuck on that fact. I mean, it seems obvious now, but if we take a Western medicine diagnosis or condition, it doesn't necessarily fit into any of the different categories of diseases we got given to choose from, right? It's more if it shows up this time of the year, it's this pattern. If it shows up that time of the year, it would be that pattern.
That's great. Based on pattern differential diagnosis. Talking about COVID-19. COVID-19, up now how many months now? From the beginning up to now, we can see the clinical manifestations changed a lot. Yes? Because it happened different season. So treatment will be different. Same in the Western and same in TCM. So all the Western diagnosis name or all the biomedical disease name, and we cannot treating them without know their clinical suffering. We have to know the basic clinical manifestations. Any illness, even for Western diagnosis, same patient have the same illness, the treatment is different.
I guess I just found that a bit troubling initially with the assignment. It felt like I had to prove that the seasonal pattern that I chose,
not necessarily season, and based on pattern, based on your selected clinical manifestations.
Yeah, I felt like I had to say, you know, Western condition equals this Wenbing pattern, and that's it.
Not Western condition. Western condition never ever equal to TCM pattern. Western conditions have clinical symptoms such as this and this equals to TCM pattern.
Okay, so it's more that we would be making the point, or the way we would write about it. Sorry, something's burning in my kitchen. That if this condition presents in this way with these kinds of symptoms, it could be interpreted to be this Wenbing pattern.
Okay, I'll give you an example. We all had experience have a flu flu virus infections. Yes. Some people after flu virus infections only present as a common cold. You treat it as a common cold. Yes. Some people present as a diarrhea, you treat it as a diarrhea. Some people present as a sore throat. The others present as a kind of very bad bronchitis. It's treated not completely different, even in conventional terms, not just in TCM, but TCM specifically focus on syndrome differential diagnosis.
Yes. Yes. I felt like the assignment was worded a bit kind of implied that that wasn't the case, or that I was asked to try and prove something otherwise. But that's just good to have that confirmed. Thank you.
That's good. So from the year 2, when I go through discussion with formulas with all the students, I try to emphasize again and again, TCM is syndrome differential diagnosis. We do not treating the biomedical disease name, and we based on clinical manifestations. We all can infect by flu, virus from go to the party, but based on our constitutions, based on strengths of pathogens, we're going to present it differently, treat more differently. It's not just in TCM, same for conventional term. Example, so I had my conditions and other people have same conditions, like we go through same operations, the treatment different because our constitution different, our body weight is different, our nationality different, so ethnic background different, and based on the constitution different. And also we have different precursor medical conditions, our clinical presentation is different. So medication we use was slightly different. They may have something same regarding to some immunosuppressants. It's the same for everybody, but different variety, different dosage will be used differently. So we need to be more flexible to see things and apply the tailored therapy. So apply the tailored therapy, not size 8, size 10 clothes fitting everybody. We need to be tailored. That's why we need to emphasize differential diagnosis for all the subject. Thank you very much. That's a very good question. Now, thank you. Let's have a look. Next slide. Number, oh my God, what's that number? Number 4, dementia. Oh my God. The damp worms has a feature of slow progression. We know it's very easy to answer that. Yes, excellent. Why? The reason they have very slow progression is because of what? Because of characteristics of dampness. Dampness is like a kind of personality. I shouldn't say personality, like a natures of the very sticky glue. And they are not happy to present to exist by itself. They like to stick with something else. So damp always the dragging the heat together, mingled together with heat. Heat won't have a fast flow and fast transmissions. Go ahead very quickly, and damp say slow down and stay with me or carry me with you. So that's why I slow down all the transmissions. And also damp is very easy to block its qi activity and can further generate more damp, become vicious circles, and affect all the normal organs functionalities. Thank you. Number 5, the content fever is damp warmth is the result of mingled damp with heat pathogen. So this answers number 4 basically. Number 6 is number 6. Damp warmth is caused by mixed yin and yang pathogens, so it is very easy to be resolved. So it is not easy to be resolved. This is correct. So not easy, which is correct. It's very hard to be resolved. It's not easy to be resolved. That's correct. Sorry. It's not easy. And because of the damp, we cannot literally of physically to separate it. If we can physically separate it, and we can resolve the heat first or resolve the damp first, and much more easy. Once the damp heat mingled together like a dough is a result of mixed of the powder, flour powder, and water, it's very hard to separate, very hard to resolve this kind of dough when it's sticky and with something else in the bodies. So this is very hard. If we miss this term, and that'd be false. If we have, it's not easy to be resolved, which is correct. Number 7, the diaphoretic is essential for treating the damp worms at the early stage. Why not? Can some diet eliminate damp better? Yeah, physical activity, it's great to, gentle physical activity, aromatic in nature's herb is good to resolve the damp. So here talking about what kind of diet can eliminate damp. And damp can consume the fluid and block it and cannot push more fluid out. So diaphoretic is very easy causing body fluid injury. Damp itself is also very easy to consuming or wearing out the body fluid. So early stage applied diaphoretic should be forbidden. Thank you. Thank you very much. Number 8, damp and heat pathogens can lead to serious yin injury. Therefore, yin tonifier herbs should be applied as early as possible. So first half is correct. First half actually answered the question for the number 7, yes? Second half is incorrect. So second half, we should cancel that. So that means altogether is impossible. The reason is most of yin tonified herbs are cloying in nature, can causing much more poor digestion function as a kind of result. And damp is already constrained or have some level of abnormality of the TT function in the spleen. So early stage apply yin tonifier is not suitable. So diaphoretic yin tonifiers are not should be used in early stage. Thank you very much. Number 9, the dampness usually affects the people when the body has weakened spleen qi. Everybody know that. That's good. Thank you very much. So just number 10, next slide. The damp worms often associated with the middle gel qi dynamic disorder in its common patterns. So if we understanding meaning of a mingled damp, so this is the reason of horrible, naughty, sticky damp. Thank you. Number 11. If any of you still have a question, have a doubt, and welcome to raise issues. Thank you. Number 11, four levels identification is a common theory applied for differential patterns in damp warmth. That's a false. We mentioned four levels is mainly used for heat and dominated Wenbing in clinical identification, and triple burner identification is mainly used for both damp and heat pathogen cause of Wenbing conditions. And they're not always very easy to match between four levels to triple burner. They have some similarities in upper burner and V level, but not absolutely linked. Depends on clinical manifestations. So they cannot be matched absolutely. Now, number 12, Sanjiao identification is used to the water metabolism disorder or qi activity abnormality conditions. This is true because Sanjiao is governed what? Sanjiao is talking about what? Talking about the qi circulations, qi dynamics, qi activities, as well as water metabolism. So any kind of water metabolism disorder, any kind of qi activity abnormalities, and that means something's happening related with Sanjiao disorder, we can use in Sanjiao identifications, no matter they have a heat or not. So generally talking about it, Sanjiao identification is used for both water metabolism and qi activity disorder related conditions. So if these conditions happen in upper jiao, so it's in upper jiao, qi obstructions, water accumulations happen in middle jiao, and qi disorder regarding to stomach's qi not able descending, spleen's qi not able ascending, and causing regurgitation, loose stools, or bloating stomachs. It's happening in lower jiao and related with difficult urination and water fluid retention on the limbs, and that's the lower jiao dysfunction involved, which is more simpler than organ differential diagnosis. Because we were required for organ differential diagnosis, so basically you just need to know which up, middle, lower, which part involved and correlated with organs. That'd be easier to explain clinically. Is that too fast? It's okay. Okay, thank you. Now, number 13, the Wenbing series has been further developed from Shanghan along the Yangtze River in history. Okay, if you learn TCM history, this is true, which tells you why this kind of concept is more popular in the regions, the growing the rice plants, and they have so much of damp involved and specific regions involved. And second part, it is a subtropical climate along the Yangtze River in China, which is correct. So similar climate, similar like in Queensland. So a bit humid, hot in summer, and the damp, cold in the winter. But in Queensland, it's not cold in winter, still warm in winter, which is subtropical climate along the Yangtze River. So if any of you visit the Nanjing, one of you, Bridget, went to the Nanjing, you can share something when you have a chance to meet everybody. It's just so hot and damp in summer. You're basically soaked in the sweat all the time if you don't turn the aircon. And in winter, it's very, very cold. Oh, winter. It's very cold, yes. And the reason I'm setting these two statements, just try to help you understanding why the season related for being in the original series. Now, number 15, the yearly heavy rainfall along the Yangtze River is around mid or later summer. So this is also correct. That's why now in China have serious and flooding, horrible water rain, and causing enormous harm for the ordinary people. So we don't talking about the politics, talking about the human life. It's such high density of human population has been affected from this heavy rain, but people play with politics around the world. They're very cool. Now, number 16. There are some levels there are some levels of symptom signs similarities between summer damp heat warmth and damp warmth. That's true, because they all have overlapped what in summer seasons. Overlapped happen in summer seasons, especially the damp warmth with a heat dominated. So heat dominated than the damp happen in damp warmth, have lots of clinical symptoms similar to the summer damp heat warmth. So treatment could be same as well. Number 17, no matter summer damp heat warmth or damp warmth, the treatment will always be same once the CM pattern has no difference. So this is very important. That means when the CM pattern is the same, treatment will be what? Treatment will be always the same. So TCM based on syndrome differential diagnosis. So that means they are correct. Don't worry, this kind of so-called name of Wen Bin. Name of the damp warmth. Once the pattern exactly the same, and treatment could be same. Thank you. So it's not just happened between biomedical science and TCM, also happened within the TCM, regarding the term of the name of illness. Now, number 18, Huo Xiang, Xiang Ru and Qing Hao are valuable herbs for treating damp heat pathogen-related disorders. They are. The reason is because they are very gentle and light. They are aromatic but not too strong diaphoretic, so they can help vent the damp out at the same time clear the heat without damage body's yin. If you're using ma huang for this instance, they're going to dehydrate it, very easy causing dehydrations, causing more severe, and the heat will be elevated as a kind of result of negative impact. But Huo Xiang, Xiang Ru, and Qing Hao are very gentle and very, very suitable. They all present as a kind of mint flavors when you smell these kind of herbs. Very soothing as well. Now, here comes to the 19. 杏仁、白豆蔻、一薏仁 are the major composition in a formula called 三仁汤. So 3 kernel. So why it's called 3? This means 3. So this is a kernel or seeds. It's basically presented using these kind of herbs. 杏仁 for upper gel, flame. 白豆蔻 for middle gel, damp, cold. 一薏仁 for lower gel, dampness, elimination. And they are very important 3 herbal groups presented in the 三仁汤. Now, here comes 20. Besides of treating heat and resolve dampness to improve qi activity is very important for dealing with damp warmth. It's very, very important. If any of us have exist damp, no matter due to lack of physical activity or weak spleen or emotional constraint, gentle physical activity or movement in your backyard at home will be very essential to help restore the proper qi activity, which is similar principle like statement presented in the 20. Thank you. Now 21. If a person has pre-existing stomach heat or strong yang qi during the damp warm suffering, who inclines to have more heat than dampness? Thank you, Lucy. This is correct. Because once you have a stomach heat, you have big appetite. Yes, you can eat more, have more heat very easily. Or if you have a strong yang qi, you are not very easy, have a dampness generations. But if you do suffering damp warmth with strong yang qi, you have more heat than the damp. So this is very easy understanding. Thank you, everybody. Now here comes next slide, 22. In damp warm suffering, if heat is more than damp, the progression of illness will be slower than dampness more than the heat patterns. Oh, thank you. So this is incorrect. Where has been wrong? The progression will be much more faster. Here, you just need to change this term. More faster than dampness, than heat. Because when heat is more dominated, heat is more yang in nature, which have features of quick movement and fast transmissions. If the heat is more than damp, usually progression of illness is much more quicker than the damp more than the heat patterns. Same for the couples. If both couples are very slow, easy going, usually they don't have involved some very strong physical activity. If both are very physically strong, enjoys competitions, very young dominated, they likes to do bushwalking and doing some very challenged physical activities. But if one is dominated, strong Yangtze, the other one slow down, it depends on how the young dominant one to leading the slow one, or if the slow one is more dominated, active one is a passive one, is not dominated. It really depends how they can juggle this balance. So same for the pathogen internally in the body. Now number 23, in general, spring worms cases have more severe fever and fast progressions than damp worms. Due to what? Spring worms have no damp involved. It's purely heat, incubated heat. And incubated heat is very unpleasant. We call that like a spy inside of your, inside of your bodies. They are very easy triggering disorders internally for your bodies as well. Number 24, damp worms are easier to bleeding than some heat worms. This is wrong. Some heat worms have more heat compared with damp worms itself. Thank you. Number 25. If a fever is mild, patient has both exterior and internal damp cold pathogen in the damp worms cases. So be careful reading here. If a fever is mild, they have both exterior and interior damp cold pattern, so they have mild heat. If mild fever, if it's a very severe fever, is that still matched or not? Just checking the whole statement first. Sorry, we're going to explain later. So this tells you something. This is correct overall. That tells you something. When people have mild fever, present looks like exterior cold and interior damp cold pattern. That means damp is more dominated, and fever only mild one, and you're using Huo Xiang Qi San. So this pattern not exactly texture and not texture, academical the damp worms conditions clinically. The more present looks like just had an internal damp cold in the spleen due to precursor of weak spleens Yangtze, and certainly caused by the wind cold from outside with external wind heat. But if the fevers also come through, you can use this and deal with. But if it's just happened between the summer and autumn, you are not sure is that damp worms or not. But once you can see the fever is very mild, shows more dampness, that means more coldness involved, you still can try using this formula. Otherwise, this formula can be too warm. If the fever is more dominated, not much of damp inside or very minor damp inside, dominated by fever, that is not suitable. It'll be too warm for that condition's name. Now, number 26, damp heat pattern in damp worms can injure Yangtze. Sorry, damp heat pathogen in damp worms can injure Yangtze. That's eventually, yes, that's correct. Now, 27, damp heat pathogen related disorder could turn into dryness, especially heat more than damp cases. So that's why in the early stage, they cannot apply diaphoretic, yes. So that's basically in some way to correlate with previous statement. Number 28. When damp heat hindering the qi dynamics and Huo Huo Xiang Tang or 三人汤 could be applied. Thank you. So 三人汤 we reviewed 3 kernel, 杏仁, 白豆蔻, 一薏仁, resolve flame on the upper jiao, damp in the middle jiao, and water in the lower jiao, and also can help benefit for qi activity, strengthen the spleen. So basically, with additional other herbs can create heat. So this altogether, these 2 formula can deal with damp heat hindering the qi dynamics in the bodies in up, middle, and lower jiaos. Number 29, the memory source or Mu Yuan disorder features lodged pathogens of the mingled damp heat in the areas where it could be hard to resolve, and its symptom signs presents as Xiao disorder pattern or malaria-like suffering. This basically is clear. There's no very clear answers for the anatomic structures about the memory sources of Mu Yuan at the moment yet. There's so many different concept understanding, but basically it's a kind of the areas which is very easy to accumulate these kind of pathogens. Mu Yuan is a memory source. We answered last week regarding Mu Yuan. You can say it's between exterior and interior. And in the regions like Sanjiao's concept or fascia, or like basically it's a kind of corner of your house, very easy to accumulate the dust and have a mold growing there. Can you hear the sound? Anybody here? You have a sound, okay. And Charlie, try to re-log in, maybe it will be okay. All right. And Mu Yuan is much more easy understanding from Sanjiao concept, so basic fascia involved. All the regions between the individual organs, between the front to the back, and it's a regions is a between something. So very easy have a region to accumulate dust. It's quite similar like wash your pillowcase, and you can find there's always something or hidden in the corner of the pillowcase when turned inside out. So that's area understandable as similar like Mu Yuan anatomically. Yingmei, you should do memo for what? Oh, thank you. Okay, now question 30. Thank you very much, Lucy. Wen Dan Tang can be applied for treating damp heat in the middle jiao or san jiao while improving qi circulation. Wen Dan Tang is modified what formula? 二层汤, which can help resolve the damp, regulate qi, and also calming the gallbladder and dealing with anxiety heat, which is correct. Okay, now comes to the last slice. Number 31. Lian Pu Yin. So Lian means Huang Nian, Pu is Hou Pu. Lian Pu Yin or 栀子导致 are useful formula to manage excessive damp heat in the middle burner. Okay, if you cannot remember, this is the correct one. Lian Pu Yin not necessarily have very bad bowel movement, for the 栀子导致丸 and usually have difficult bowel movement involved while they're suffering the damp heat in Wenbing or in disorder in digestions. Now, number 32. 白虎加苍柱汤 can treat damp heat in the qi level no matter summer damp heat warmth or damp warmth. Correct, because the 白虎汤 can manage the heat in qi level, 苍柱 can manage the damp. So from the we missed the concept 4 today. You saw this formula 白虎加苍柱汤. Same formula also presenting the pattern of the summer damp heat warmth in qi levels. Last one. For sore throat due to damp toxic heat, care for the pathogen. It's not wind toxic heat, damp toxic heat accumulation with qi stagnation 甘露消毒饮 or 甘露消毒丹 would be more appropriate formula instead of than the 银桥散. So this is basically a statement, and this is a correct statement. In the clinic, we can see some people have very bad sore throat. We say, oh, sore throat, we apply 银桥散. But after 银桥散applied for them, their sore throat has been very well settled or in some way subsided in the suffering. At the same time, that tells you they have horrible appetite. They have no appetite, very bad digestion involved, and very bloated stomachs, or lots of greasy white tongue coating presented on the tongue, either due to overdoses of yin qiaos and too much bitter herbs involved, dampness qi, or originally they have some level of damp or damp heat together with toxic heat, or it did not have enough herbs to adjust that. That's why when yin qiaos manage the damp, manage sore throat, control the sore throat, and other dampness comes out, becomes more noticeable concern. All right, now any questions for the week 7 or any issues for week 7's concept would like sharing? Will we be given a short list for the exam study, please? Yes, you're given a short list on week 10. Yes, Charlie.
So, Ying, if we use aromatic herbs that can transform the damp, then can we use smell the essential oil? Can you do similar job?
Yes, yes. If you are keen about aromatherapy, yes, you can. Thank you. Okay, let's have a look today. We are going to learn a new concept of the Wenbing. Now we finished discussing windworms, which is first Wenbing we discussed within the 7 category. And second one is the spring worms, and followed by summer heat worms, and then damp worms. Today we're going to learn the lurking summer heat worms. So have a look. What's the difference for this one? Lurking summer heat worms is caused by unresolved summer heat pathogens. So these kind of summer heat pathogens attack the people in the season of summer. They may cause some conditions or partially resolved, did not cause any clinical complaint. They invaded in your systems and has not had a chance to come out. So they keep going, living with you unhappily, and multiple their pathogens and go through incubations like similar like spring worms. And induced by any kind of external attack, so always induced, always need invitation from secondary external pathogens. Without invitations, they are very happy living with us and causing more severe damage in some level. And then when autumn and winter comes, through the weather changes, give the invitations for this kind of incubated pathogen of summer heat, and it comes out causing issues. So they're happening in the same seasons, like spring, like windworms, like other pathogens we'll discuss later. So different season, different reason of strength for the pathogens, and initial causes is in specific summers. They still present as a kind of quick onset Wenbing. And usually when it comes out as a kind of a clinical need to be adjust conditions, they have both exterior conditions and qi level heat simultaneously. So very serious and protracted, such as influenzas, all these very scaring dishes. Epidemic hemorrhagia is very scary, this one, once you have fevers come through, and can have very bad malaria, some malaria types. When I was little, I saw people suffering malaria. That was horrible. 1 minute they need the 3 or 4 layers of donuts covered. They're shivering, they're so cold. Another minute, they couldn't bear have anything covered on their body, very high temperatures. When sweatings go through and fevers settle, they become normal. And then another cycle comes through. oh, I thought it was a mental illness as a kind of issues. And now, after I've grown up, I know that was malaria. It's so horrible, malaria. But I never saw these conditions here, leptospirosis, and I saw this reported in the hospital, but I never see that in front of me. I think I'll be scared. I saw people suffering very serious hepatitis, have very bad jaundice, at the same time vomiting the blood out through their mouth in the hospital. That's pretty scary things for me to experience. It's kind of horror in a way. So in the early stage of looking summer heat worms, always have what? Has a kind of similar like common cold because of the season of autumn and winter. So it feels like chills, fever, sneezing, a little bit cough, the all cold comes out. And due to the pathogen as a lurking pathogens, they can have combination of lurked summer heat with a damp combined. So usually when you check their tongue and they have some level of greasy, or people have some special concern in the digestive tracts. And also due to the nature of incubated summer heat and dry heat, if it's dominated, can very easily transformed into a kind of from the dampness. So summer heat is very hot, very fiery. And once the summer heat incubated in the body, very easy to turn the damp into the heat. So very, very quickly and transmissions as well. Now, this is the basic important information regarding to the features in lurking summer heat worms for its etiologists and pathologists. So summer heat usually combined with the dampness. Or damp is very naughty one, always trying to, squeeze them together, mingle together, says, I love you, then mingle together with heat. So never everyone go by itself. So summer heat mixed together, mingle together with dampness. And when they affect the bodies in the summer, they can cause some illness, partial result, or they sometimes just did not cause any illness, but invaded inside until the season autumn winter comes with secondary exterior pathogen attack and inviting them comes out. Second part for these kind of lurking summer heat worms, and it really depends on the constitutions and the duration of incubations. If your constitution is strong enough, usually the pathogens does not have a great opportunity to incubate inside the bodies. They can be pushed away and instantly on the season during the summer. And usually related with people do not have a strong constitution, especially spleen is not weak. So the damp heat or summer heat with a damp, you're affected in the summer will be very easy incubated with your systems. And duration of incubation, some of these kind of pathogens can incubate in the body for quite a while. We know the COVID-19 virus can have very nice incubation in the bodies. They don't cause any kind of clinical manifestations, but the people have these kind of unclinical symptoms, virus affected, can share with others, become very, very unexpected, thief or kind of spy, causing other people suffering illness. Same for these kind of incubated summer heat pathogens. Longer they can be incubated, and more heat can be grown up, more multiplied pathogens can become, and once these kind of outbreak comes through. Similar for the hepatitis patients, some people have that specific enzyme elevated in the bodies after the initial attack from the contaminated blood transmissions, and once the second invitations comes from another blood transfusions, contaminations involved, or from other illness triggered, they can cause a very bad outbreak as well. Number third, for the new attack stimulates disease to merge. So lurking summer heat worms always need invitation from exterior attack. And without invitations, they're very happy to stay inside. The reason is because they have lurking summer heat related to dampness. Dampness usually dragging you stay and find another host, become mingled pathogen will stay inside in your digestive tracts. A lot of digestion disorders, not just caused by the parasites or contaminated food, so-called of parasites contamination in the dishes. Some of that does relate to some virus infections, especially when you're visiting tropical countries or visiting country in summer, eating food not very well prepared regarding the hygienic conditions. You are going to breathing these kind of pathogens in your digestion tracts until one day you become very, very ill. They can outbreak, causing some issues for your systems. And number four, the incubated pathogens usually and they have some level of damp, and that's why the spleen has been first or most common regions will be related to these kind of locations for the incubated pathogens. So that means qi dynamics in Middle Earth, especially digestion, will progressively getting worse or getting affected. So maybe both spleen and stomachs, but spleen is a major thing. So that's why some people say, oh, I have very healthy digestion, until one day I went for the party with my friends, eat some food, I do not feel well, but never had become very, very sick. Many years later, you realize just this kind of food, I ate it or experienced, and slowly my digestion become very, very funny. One is you find smells very, very unpleasant in early stage, and then much more easy, have a diarrhea, have bloating, have abdominal pain, and then start to become allergies to the weed, allergies to different food, and then become very, very bad bloated, just progressively changes. And it's quite similar like this kind of incubated summer heat as well. Number 5, underlying insufficiency. If there's a constitutional underlying insufficiency while you've been suffering the lurking summer heat or has been affected by summer heat pathogens, these kind of pathogens very easy turn the dampness into the dryness. So end up become dry heat can affect the nutritive level. Because without turn the dampness into the dried heat, without the dominant heat than the damp, usually nutritive level or blood level will ever affected. They only stay in the qi level. Damp is dominated. Okay, any question for these slides? All right. Yes, Cassandra, okay. How can we tell, next question, how can we tell if it is lurking pathogens compared to someone that is called a cold pathogens who has a constitutional indeficient or internal heat? The different things is lurking summer heat and a non-lurking summer heat. When it comes in autumn and winter, and the degree of the fever or progressions is different. Lurking summer heat worms have much more strong fever and much more fast progressions. If it's just a common cold, you don't have very high strong fever, you don't have very severe transmissions, and everything else just settled like common cold, like winged worms. Very simple. Just a temperature, high temperatures, and settle, that's it. They don't have serious dampness, and they don't have internal heat. When you have lurking summer heat attack, you have internal heat as internal damp heat as well as external attack related pathogens. And there's another one. I think I had this when I got diagnosed with, yes, Bell's palsy. All the herpes virus involved affected outbreak. They have some level of heat and the damp simultaneously. Yes, it's quite a common conditions with herpes virus. Yes. There's another one. It's the fever that gives the key indication. Yes, it's a fever give the, yeah. I had vomiting fever, acute vomiting fever, then for 6 weeks had ongoing fever. 6 weeks had ongoing fever. So this fever usually is damp heat mingled together. Because if we learn the Sanghan, we know that if the fever lasts for more than 1 week, it's not in the Taiyang level anymore. They have to go to internally. So for this one, have a fever for 6 weeks. If it's higher than 38 degrees, usually it's damp heat mingled. Then diagnosed with that. Oh, poor thing. Yes, Alisa?
This is actually more what my question before was in relation to. I should have waited and asked it later.
Yes.
Someone brought up Epstein-Barr virus. So say with these kind of viruses that there's a long incubation period, so there is the latency there. Would it be if that happened around summer and then expressing in autumn that it's lurking summer heat, but if Michelle caught the virus in winter and expressed in spring with the symptoms of spring warmth.
Yes.
That means it's
Yeah.
Okay.
If they present in different season, they can code different, and also clinically could have different severity of the heat. You're right.
Okay.
If you caught these pathogens in summer, comes in autumn or winter, you call the lurking summer heat. But if you caught a pathogen in winter, comes in spring, you call the windworms, because pathogen different. When you caught a pathogen in winter, you don't have a damp heat, only damp cold. And then it comes out in the spring, that's windworms. But if the spring worm, sorry, if you caught it in the winter, could not comes out in the same season, it comes in the spring, it's the spring worms, it's incubated, it's different one. They have no damping involved. But if you got the spring worms, you caught in season, either in the spring or the winter, which is all fresh, the new pathogen, they have no incubation, no severe temperature, high temperature involved. They have more noticeable wee level conditions instead.
So if you caught a virus that expressed itself that has a long incubation period, like the Epstein-Barr virus, if it was to express as a Wenbing pattern, it would either be lurking summer heat or spring warmth.
If it comes in the autumn and comes in winter, have very high temperatures, a lot of internal heat, yes. If it's not, you are not called that Wenbing at all.
Great.
They have to have high fever. Some people have the Bell's palsy as a result. They don't have any kind of high temperature. Just suddenly, because it looks like, oh, I had a stroke. That's it. Can be very quick. When I had the Bell's palsy in 2014, and which is the same virus, I get it like a Michelle. I did not have very high temperatures due to immunosuppressants I'm taking. But I have dreadful headaches and horrible pounding headaches. I thought my head is going to burst it into the volcanoes, whatever. And also my hearing has been affected. In my ear, I can hear everything's like symphony. It's very noisy, so loud. I couldn't bear it, which caused by exact same virus, but the diagnosis of clinic is different in conventional term, same in TCM term. And also depends your constitution as well. You only have very high temperatures. You have what? Enough what? Anti-pathogenic factor qi, enough yang qi. For me, because under the immunosuppressants or with constitution, I don't have normal or ordinary anti-pathogenic qi, don't have normal immune systems. That's why I don't have ability to resist, reject it. That's why without what? Fighting. For that cases, clinically, I don't have a fever, and my condition, same condition of suffering, which based on the clinical symptoms cannot be called as Wenbing at all. Does that help you answer these questions, Alyssa?
Thanks so much. And I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
that happened to you.
No, it's okay. It's all right. Now, there's another question. Allergies in children, adults develop in old age could be from incubations in spleen over the year. Yes, but not necessarily they can be called as Wenbing if they do not have fever. Thank you, Charlie. It's good sharing. A lot of allergies will happen in adult time and have a precursor account of the poor immunities due to long-term improper lifestyles and poor lifestyles, with poor dietary and a lot of contamination from food or drinks or air. So if they have no high temperature involved, we do not call that Wenbing. Thank you. It's very good we can sharing. So another question, how does Chinese medicine preserve short incubation period? Like in some infections, it is lurking heat that is a laying domain or damp involved. Okay. 1 month or 7 days durations only counted in Sanghan. That means it's only for damp cold or cold. And when we learn classics, we learn classics 1, Taiyang. The maximum day or maximum duration of Taiyang suffering is 7 days. After 7 days, this kind of unresolved external pathogens is going either involved into the Huo Xiang or into Yangming or into 3 Yin divisions based on your constitutions. But for Wen Bing, we do not have such a clear durations, and 7 days from external attack without resolving for 7 days Wen Bing, which is not very common. Usually it involves mixed Qi level and Wi level simultaneously. That can be possibly for 7 days. For only Wi level for 7 days conditions, Wen Bing is impossible. They also need to be, you should have much more fast transmissions from Wi level to Qi level. Within 3 days, if high temperature cannot be resolved in Wi level, definitely it's going to affect Qi level. Maybe first they already affect Qi level, such as spring worms. Does that answer your question, Jacob? Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. It's good we can discuss about certain concepts or questions and also help me to try and explain that properly. Thank you very much. Now, key factors for identify the lurking summer heat worms is they have to be in specific season, autumn and winter. They have very quick onset. So very quick comes out, sudden outbreak. So they have invitations and suddenly comes out. They have accumulation of summer heat with a damp. So symptoms related with what? With high temperatures, with internal dampness, and also with external pathogens. What's the invitation? Either wind cold or wind heat, doesn't matter which one. With just put additional one, have invitation from external wind cold or wind heat. And transformations very, very fast. Usually you can see noticeable heat pattern very quickly due to incubated summer heat here. And this is a kind of an image to try to help us understanding what were happening for during the invitations for incubated summer heat. So no matter it's a wind heat or wind cold in autumn or winter season, when the invited, incubated, unresolved summer damp heat internally, they can cause issues. Either issues come from simultaneous Wi level or Qi level disorder. If the lurking summer heat is so strong, people have reasonable good Yangtze, they can at Yin level and blood level. So this theoretically you can talking about this one. But if the wind cold as an invitation, usually they are not very easy to turn this kind of lurking summer damp heat into dryness heat very quickly, and it takes a bit longer times. We know people have a precursor or pre-exist yang deficiency, very easy to be affect what? Wind cold. If you have existing heat or Yangtze inside, you're easy to be affected with the heat. So this is something, you have warm nature, you are easy affected, invited by the heat pathogen. You have a cold constitution, you are very easy affected by cold pathogens there. So you find similarities and bring great synergies together. Now, progressions of lurking summer heat worms. So early stage of 2 patterns depends on the invitation of pathogen. So if the invitation of pathogen is a wind cold attack, usually resulting what? Because the cold involved is more yin in nature, you usually have simultaneous both Wi and Qi level affected. And because external cold with internal damp and incubated summer heat, so cold is yin in nature, summer heat is heat, and the dampness is cold, so very easy to still stay in this 2 level. But if its invitations come from wind heat, heat and wind both are heat in nature, incubated heat is heat, damp is a cold, so that means heat is more than the damp and have much more easier simultaneous Wi and yin level simultaneously. So this transmission much more quicker. This just makes sense. More heat, much more fast transmission, more deep involved regarding 4 levels. Now, Wi level symptoms resolving and Qi levels and pool patterns. So usually they'll never have a singular Wi level orders in the lurking summer heat pattern. They're always simultaneously, either Wei or Qi, or Wei or the Yin level. You can see they always it's a kind of combination patterns. So no matter it's triggered by wind cold or wind heat attack. So you need resolving both simultaneously. So lurking summer heat with a damp in the Sanjiao, lurking summer heat with dampness in the middle burner. If lurking summer heat with a damp in the middle burner, usually is involved, or they could involve more weakness in the spleen, and usually do not have a severe the heat causing injuries in the nutritive blood level. If they involve the triple burner, it depends how much heat in the heart and how much liver involvement, how level of the heat, they can have slightly more complicated issues there. So treatment was slightly different here based on this pattern. So theoretically, you can make a lot of pattern clinically based on the clinical manifestations. So we need to see the reality, make a tailored formula suitable for the individual sufferings. So general treatment principle for lurking summer heat worms. So if it's involved in Qi level, you need to clear the lurking summer heat, transform the damp, and combine together with exterior conditions resolving. If you only see the Qi condition, which is not very common, unless there's a wind heat attack exteriorly, a wind heat exterior symptoms very quickly resolving when you visit your doctors, only remaining Qi level disorder, you can use this kind of principle indicated. Most commonly, they show both Qi level and Wei level up to these stages by the wind cold attack. So release exterior, clear lurking heat, lurking summer heat, and transform the flame. So these are two basic ones, and as I kind of talking about how to resolve the heat in the Qi level, resolve the heat and damp in Qi level, how to resolve the external pathogen with internal heat and damp in Qi level simultaneously. But if the damp is so dominated or damp heat both equally in ratios, we're using the Sanjiao identifications. If they involve a triple burner, you clear the heat from triple burner and also drain the damp simultaneously. And if the heat mainly affect the middle burner, and you result with dysentery, diarrhea, and present intestinal disorder, you purge the damp heat using bitter cooling one and also clear the heat and transform the damp. Now, if the wind heat affect the body, have level of yin level disorder, while resolving exterior, you always need added herbs or added principles to help to supply the yin and clear the heat from nutritive level or vent heat to more superficial levels. So what's the difference between cleared heat and vent heat? Vent heat is using more gentle herbs, and they have a cold in nature, cooling in nature, also slightly aromatics, like you open the window, open the door, let the flies out. But if the whole household smells so bad, you cannot just leave ajar the window and the door. You need to open that completely. We call that clear the heat or purge the heat out. These are subtle differences. All the vent heat out herbs such as Qing Hao, Xiang Ru, we mentioned, and these aromatic gentle herbs, vent heat out to more superficial levels. So from your bedrooms, walking to the front door, and living household have a certain different stages. You cannot from your bedroom's window jumping out, leaving the household, which is not normal practice. It's similar for the Wenbing practice as well. Okay. Now, any questions so far? Now, if we do not have questions, we're going to have a 15 minutes break.